The other day, Stephen Harper made a modest announcement. He was going to give tax relief for service club members. By his own admission, it was a very small announcement, maybe just worth 10 or 20 bucks. But that adds up over time, and more importantly, it's the symbolism, a recognition that service clubs are very important building blocks of our country. It's not even about the money at all, actually. It's about the love of community. As Edmund Burke, the great conservative philosopher, wrote more than 200 years ago, quote, "To be attached to the subdivision, to love the little platoon we belong to in society is the first principle of public affections," unquote. In other words, you build a strong country from the bottom up, from the family up, from your block up. Anyone who's ever been to a Rotary Club meeting or a Kiwanis Club meeting or a Lions Club meeting knows exactly what this means. It's that weekly breakfast or lunch you have with a few dozen other civic-minded people. It's the fun, often goofy rituals, the funny hats or the funny songs, but you better bring a bunch of toonies and $5 bills with you. I've never been to a Rotary meeting where you don't get hit up several times for the countless charitable projects these groups do. Whether it's a student scholarship or building a local playground or helping to eradicate some disease in the third world. Rotary really goes after polio, for example. And unlike the massive corporate charities like the Heart and Stroke Foundation that take 50% of their revenues for fundraising expenses, these service clubs are volunteer efforts and they don't skim money for themselves. They're full of the kind of people who you'd want as neighbors, the kind of people who in the past fought our wars. They're great people, and it's no surprise that Stephen Harper wants their vote. And I'm sure he'll get a lot of their votes with or without his $10 tax credit. But again, it is the symbolism, which is why it is so instructive to look at the sneering from the media party. Harper's announcement was immediately mocked by the fancy people, by the snobs, by people who would never be caught dead eating at the lowbrow hotel restaurants favored by these groups at the weekly meetings, by never caught dead selling raffle tickets for a 50-50 charity draw. Oh, that's just too cheesy. Social media was instantly flooded with mockery of this service club announcement. Here's an example. "Here comes the Harper Service Club tax credit recipients. Haha, what a bunch of clowns, a bunch of old white men in funny cars. No wonder Stephen Harper loves them." Now look, I'm not going to go and show you a ton of tweets from anonymous folks. I'm talking about the media and the political elite. For example, here's Jason Markusoff from Maclean's magazine. He said, "Rotary Service Club folk are huge political volunteers, now with tax credit for just being them." So it's all a political scheme, you see, to reward conservative volunteers. But actually, political parties already get generous tax treatment. This is for service clubs. It's got nothing to do with politics. It's for the service they do. But Maclean's thinks this is some scam, I guess. I don't know. I didn't quite understand that. Here's Stephen Marr of Post Media. "Why give people a tax credit for service club memberships? Inane." Yeah, inane, man. Or here's Justin Ling from Vice.com. "What I really wanted to ask Harper was whether his new service club tax credit will apply to my fight club." Well, yeah, Justin, fighting each other is not service to the community. Of course, Tabitha Southey, the gossip columnist at the Toronto Globe and Mail, tweeted this picture and said, "Okay, who wants to join my service club? Working on the hats right now." Ha ha, those hats, they're so goofy, aren't they? And that's what service is all about, Tabitha. Goofy hats, goofy cars, goofy old white guys. Hey, do you think any of these media elites I just quoted have actually ever gone to a service club meeting? I mean, sat through the whole thing? I don't think they have. I don't think they have a clue. And I don't think that they even know what a service club is. Justin, it's not a fight club. Tabitha, it's not just about the hats. I think that these critics don't actually believe in service. I think Tabitha Southey actually thinks all the Shriners do is wear red hats and drive goofy cars, because I think that is truly how shallow she is. I don't think she even knows that they put on those funny hats to make their real work more fun, the real work of raising millions of dollars, so much that they have built 22 children's hospitals in North America, including one in Montreal. But a Toronto gossip columnist would never be caught dead doing something so gross and so unfashionable. Southey is famous for her Twitter campaign to get two anti-Israel extremists named Tarek Loubani and John Grayson released from an Egyptian jail after they were arrested at a Muslim Brotherhood riot. They were not a charity case, but they were so fashionable, you see, That's Tabitha Southey's idea of charity and service, something glamorous, something to brag about to her ladies who lunch. Service? Giving to others? Actual charity? Huh. Here, listen to her ex-husband, comedian Dave Foley, talk about her.
I have to pay $17,700 a month. But yeah, no, I was ordered by Canadian court to pay, like, what at that point was about 5 times my income every month in child support, which was based on my earnings when I was doing news radio. And I don't know if you've checked the listings. It hasn't been on for 12 years. Yeah, I live in a very, live in a small loft in downtown LA, and, and my family in Toronto lives in a $2.5 million house on a park.
Yeah, I don't think that service to others is high on Tabitha Southey's agenda. This all reminds me of a survey developed by the great Charles Murray when he wrote his book Coming Apart, about the social divisions in America. It applies in large part to Canada too. Murray argues that America is self-segregating itself. Fancy people like to live near other fancy people. Neighborhoods aren't very mixed anymore. We don't know each other as well as we used to. And here's the amazing thing. Murray argues quite convincingly that the people who are the most insulated, the people who know the least about how the other side lives, are rich liberal elites. They claim to be the most open-minded, but they are actually the most closed-minded, he argues. They're the kind of people who would never be caught dead at a Walmart or a Rotary Club meeting. He developed this great quiz. You can find it online. Seriously, just Google Charles Murray quiz to test how closed you are. Here, let me read a few questions of it for you, okay? Here's my favorite. Have you ever walked on a factory floor? I think most liberals and even most NDPers, even most union members these days, would say no to that if they were answering honestly. They claim to be for working people. They just don't really like being around working people. That's part of their hatred of pipelines and oil sands and mining and forestry. Anyone who wears a hard hat, really, it's snobbery. Here's another question from Murray's survey. During the last 5 years, have you or your spouse gone fishing? I mean, normal people do that. Not everybody, but millions of people. Not fancy people, though. Here's a great one. Have you ever participated in a parade not involving global warming, a war protest, or gay rights? Helping to decorate a float counts even if you didn't get to ride on it, unquote. Isn't that a great question? Normal people celebrate community that way, their neighborhoods, their little platoons. They don't see parades as political activism. Here's another question. Since leaving school, have you ever worn a uniform? Wearing a uniform in a dramatic production or on Halloween does not count, unquote. That's a great one. A uniform means a military job or a certain kind of job, security or a trade, things like that. Now, hipsters love wearing fake uniforms. Seriously, there are entire clothing lines of fake blue-collar shirts like this one, literally called Johnny Hipster. That's the closest that urban liberal elites like to get to working people. Working people, they smoke and they talk about football and they like to drink cheap beer, not the fancy beers. That's what I mean about the cultural divide. You're not an evil person if you don't know what the other side is like. But I think what we see in the media elites here is they just don't actually know anyone who is in a service club. I won't go through all the questions on Murray's quiz. There are great ones asking if you have a close friend who's an evangelical Christian, or if you ever hang out with people who smoke, what TV shows you like, what movies, what restaurant chains, what kind of car or truck you drive, what kind of beer. There is no right or wrong answer, of course. Murray explains every question in his survey through statistics, just showing how popular these down market or blue collar things are once you get out of Manhattan or Hollywood or downtown Toronto. Here's question 18. Have you ever attended a meeting of a Kiwanis Club or a Rotary Club or a meeting at a union local? I like that, the union local. Not the national political BS that union bosses do, but regular workaday local meetings. I don't think Charles Murray knows that some journalists are unionized too. If he did, he'd probably drop that part from the question. Anyways, Tabitha Southey, Justin Ling, Jason Markusoff, Steve Maher, they think they're so sophisticated because they're on Twitter and they're journalists and they spend their days thinking about things. And they are sophisticated. But for people who consider themselves so open-minded and adventurous and worldly, they are certainly quite provincial and insular. I bet they all regard themselves as exotic travelers, France, maybe even to Thailand to show how open-minded they are. But they'd never go to deepest, darkest suburbia and have lunch in a Hospitality Inn diner with a bunch of Rotary Club members. I mean, those people are NOKD, not our kind, dear. On election night, when Stephen Harper wins whatever he wins, it'll be more than they expect him to win. And all of these experts on Canada will all say the same thing. But how could it happen? Everyone I know was voting for Justin Trudeau or Thomas Mulcair. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.